Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Is giving few indicative definitions to help us understand to some extent that inconceivable Brahman. Now when we say this indicative, what is the job of an indicator? What is that indicator does? And how do you understand that? Indicator has no connection to that which is indicated. But you cannot understand that which is indicated without that indicator. I'll give an example, then it will become easier. Right? So there is no way that you can connect to what is being indicated without the indicator. But the indicator has no direct relationship, direct connection with the indicated. Like the clock and the time. The clock is the indicator of time. Correct? But the clock has got nothing to do with time. If clock and time were to have a connection, there is a relationship, let's say, then all that I have to do is reverse the clock. We will go to yesterday morning. Time travel will be very easy. All that we have to do is reverse the clock. How to stop time? Remove the battery. Or in those days, we used to give key. Don't give key. What has happened, sir? I have stopped the time. No. The idea of time has got nothing to do with the clock. But you cannot understand, you cannot relate, you cannot transact with the concept called time without a clock. And the clock can be anything. We are not referring to a particular clock. Now today we are using a particular one. About 2000 years back, those people used a different clock. Different time, days, months, years. They had a different one. Down the line, after about 2000 years, we have no idea what they will be using. Like today, if you tell the kids, we used to give key to the clock. They think, what's wrong with you people? And learning clock, your child, teaching them to see a clock is such a complex job. The current generation need not do all those things. Why? It's all digital. Now, what is the time? He says it is 7:07. But when we were small, the time you defined what is the time as 7 o'clock, and then you have to calculate 5, between 5 and 10 it is standing. If this is standing between 5 and 10, we should figure out where it is exactly, then add. And invariably we get confused because as a child we all understand 1 full means it is 100. Right, here suddenly they say it is 60. Now why that 60 came, we don't know. How there is nothing, the calculation. Whatever you do to the clock, you make the clock to perfection. Nowadays they have this, watches, this, what they call that, nano clocks. It gives you even a nanosecond perfection it gives. Not like your, ordinary clocks. This is a clock. But if that clock breaks, that doesn't mean you have transcended time. Isn't it? You can't say, I'm not using a wristwatch. Right? So what is it, sir? I have transcended time? No watch, not transcended time. Because if time is equal to clock, if clock is what is defining time, then whatever I do to clock should impact time. No, it doesn't. I am so anxious for July to come, and it's not coming in that speed. What to do? Simply go to the calendar and tear the sheets. If I tear the sheets in the calendar, doesn't mean the day has arrived, isn't it? But anytime you want to, anywhere you have to transact, connect with it, you need a clock. So, what is a clock? What is a calendar? All these things are nothing but indicators of time. But they don't have any connection to the time. This we can understand. Similarly, this indicative definitions, whatever he is giving, has got no connection to Brahman. But to relate with Brahman, this helps. In that sense, they are very effective, very useful. So we study. With the understanding what? There is no connection. But at the same time, okay, the moment I say there is no connection, we'll say, then why waste time? Skip. Immediately Vedanta says, no. You cannot say that also. So, how you relate to these points? You relate to the points exactly like how you relate to your calendar, your clock. For transactional purpose, for you to relate to the time, you need it. Otherwise, it is not needed. So therefore, we study these things in that same understanding. Advayam, Ekam, Nityam, etc. He is going to give one by one. All that very many definitions are coming now. In that we have seen up the first 5. We have seen Ekam, Advayam, Nirakara, Sarvagatam and Nirguna. Attributeless. 1. Non-dual, formless, all-pervading and attributeless. These are the 5 we have seen already. And as I have told you, we are not going into the detailed analysis of each point. That's not what we are going to do. We'll just get some ideas here and there for us to relate to this particular concept. So what is the meaning of Nirguna? Guna means attributes, properties. The moment we say guna, property, it is subjected to perishability. It will perish. It will die. It will change. It is subject to change. Since Brahman is not going to be a changing phenomena, we understand that Brahman has to be propertyless. If it has properties, then Brahman also will perish over a period of time. So, a property is possible only when it is a substance. Another angle. There are two angles we have seen. One is it is perishability. Second one is only a substance can have a property. Brahman is not a substance. Since Brahman is not a substance, it cannot be having any attributes. Therefore, what is Brahman? It is Nirguna. This is how we give. So the same thing you have to repeat over and over again. Then you will be able to get a glimpse of something beyond it. But you can't search for something beyond. Repeat the same thing, suddenly something beyond will appear. One day it will come. That is guaranteed. But when that one day, we have no idea. That one day can be tomorrow, that one day can be after 10 years, and that one day can be after 10 Janmas also. That we don't know. But one thing for sure, that as you keep repeating, you will get it. So wait till that time. Keep repeating. Don't leave. Keep repeating. So read it like this. Nirgunaha means attributeless. Why we are calling Brahman attributeless? Because if it has anything which has attributes, perishes. And Brahman cannot be a perishing entity. You say Brahman perishes, then the substratum of the world is what we call as Brahman. If the substratum itself perishes, then how can the world, it can give a support to the world. It cannot give support to the world. So therefore what this is how we go on deriving things. As you keep thinking, you will derive more and more out of it. More and more material you can derive out of it. Stay with it like. But we can't afford that in the class. You see, so in the class we can just give some direction to your thinking. That's it. And then you have to do your own reflection. And you will get it. Aksharam. Yeah, next 5. Aksharam, Ajaha, Nitya, Nirvikara, and Nirmal. Read up to Nirmala. Yeah.
Aksharam, imperishable. Every object and being has a beginning and an end, birth and death. The terrestrial world is an expression of creation and destruction, but Brahman is transcendental, beyond the terrestrial, not subject to birth and death, hence imperishable. Ajam, unborn. Brahman, Atman, is not born when beings are born, nor does it die when beings die. It always was, is, and will ever be, with no beginning or end, hence considered unborn. Nitya, eternal. Eternal means beyond time. Time is the interval between two experiences, as distance is between 2 points. There can be no distance at a point. There has to be more than 1 point to create the idea of distance. A minimum of 2 points is necessary to measure distance. So it is with time. There can be no concept of time at the first experience. With the second experience alone is time born, since 2 are required to measure time. That perhaps is the reason for the unit of time to be termed second. Time therefore arises with the second experience. But Brahman, being the source of all experiences, existed at the very first. Hence said to be before time, trans-time, timeless, eternal. Nirvikara, changeless. Brahman, Atman, remains changeless in and through the changes occurring in the equipments it enlevens. The body, mind, and intellect change continuously. These changes are perceptible because of the presence of the changeless substratum, the Atman that supports them all. Nirmala, stainless. Stainless means pure, immaculate. A substance is pure when the material of the substance is not mixed with anything else. For example, a sample of gold is pure only when there is no material but gold in it. If other material is mixed with it, it becomes impure. Brahman is said to be ever pure, since there exists nothing other than Brahman. There can be no contamination in Brahman, hence stainless.
Aksharam. Kshara means perishable. Akshara means non-perishable, imperishable. The world is said to be Kshara because it has a beginning and an end. There is a beginning, there is a cycle of creation. And there is a cycle, in that cycle of creation, and then there is destruction. Creation, destruction. Creation, destruction. In between creation, destruction exists maintenance. So the whole thing is what? Creation, maintenance, destruction. But factually, what is going on, if you see, there is no direct effort with reference to maintenance. What is going on, if you see, is between creation and destruction, there is a period. That is what this is. But what is it, sir? It just survives. It exists being there. But Brahman is beyond. So what is Brahman? Brahman is that pure consciousness in you. Body, mind and intellect were all perishable in you. Your body perishes, your mind perishes, your intellect perishes. They are all perishable. Kshara. What is imperishable? The consciousness that enlivens this body, mind and intellect. That doesn't perish. If that also perishes, then how would you recognize the existence of body, mind, intellect? You see, so what is Brahman? We say Brahman is imperishable in nature. It is Aksharam. This is the explanation we have for that. Then he says Ajaha, unborn. All our understanding comes, all that we can understand about life and everything is, the starting point is the birth of the body and it ends at the death of the body. Body is birth and body is death. All our understanding is existing between the two only. Now suddenly he comes up and says, consciousness is not having any birth. Meaning, birth of the body does not mean the birth of the consciousness. The death of the body does not mean the death of the consciousness. The pure consciousness stands independent of all this. This birth and death, this cycle is not there for Brahman. It is beyond. So therefore, there is nothing to get excited about birth and there is nothing to get dejected about death. Why? Anyway, we are not talking about. Anyway, you are not worried about the body. What is it, sir? If there is birth, there will be death. You can't escape. If you have to escape death, there is only one way. Don't take birth. The moment there is birth, there will be death. It's just a question of time. You see, for few, it can happen in few years. For some of them may take a little longer. Some of them will take very long period. Like some tortoise, they say, it is living for the last it is 202. And they had some birthday celebrations few years back. Tortoise, 200 years old. The tortoise is. Now you can be born as a tortoise, then you will be there for 200 years. So it depends. Some tortoise don't, reach to the ocean. Before that itself it's dead. It dies. It just comes out of the egg and it dies. So how this is, we don't know. But one thing for sure, wherever there is birth, is death. Now what is interesting is, you believe the birth of the body to be your birth. You are born. That's where this Aja is important. It says birth of the body is not birth of the individual. It's not that. Then what is born? Consciousness is not born at that time. Therefore what? It is beyond birth. Beyond birth means unborn. It is not born. There is no birth for it. That is what this Aja means. And then he gives Nityam, eternal. It's another beautiful definition. Now each one is superb. Each one is a classic way of explaining what that Brahman is. It's Nityam, eternal. See, this eternal is connected to the factor of time. Sarvagatam, what he gave earlier, is connected to the factor of space. Now, what we need to understand is, the world that we know of has three aspects: time, space, causation. These are the three things. In that three, this using the time as a reference point and explaining Brahman is the Nityam. That's all. Using space as a reference point to explain Brahman is Sarvagatam. Using causation to refer, that is infinite. Anantam, that's coming up. We'll see that. There are three words used here: Sarvagatam, Nityam, Anantam, infinite. Referring to these three dimensions of world that we know of: time, space, causation. Now when we discuss in that, when we refer to time, we have an understanding of time. Our understanding of time is studied from three different angles. One is the chronological time. Right. When was your birthday? Yes. Right. That is one. Where were you born? That is space. Right. When was your birthday? You give that thing. That is time. This is chronological time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and years you give, and then this month you give, this particular date, particular month, particular year, all that what we are referring to, these are all chronological time. Right? External. Then you have psychological time. Another dimension about time is psychological time. The chronological time is common for all of us, whereas the psychological time is not common for everyone. That varies from person to person. Like a person says, have 2 more gulab jamun. This guy who is getting into the fitness mode, he says, I take 2 more gulab jamun, I have to jog another 15 minutes to burn these calories. I have to jog another 5 minutes. Can't you jog? Now only when a person who goes for jogging only knows what is that 5 minutes. Or these people, in that one of the exercises they do, the plank. They just stand with their elbows. The plank. And that fellow says, 60 seconds, that's all. Right? 60 seconds on plank is what? It's like you are standing on plank for eternities, isn't it? It's like, my God, it's too much. How long I've been in that position? Change it. Whereas you go and sit and watch a movie, 2.5 hours gone. You don't even realize that. Right? 60 seconds we are not able to. We experience is so this way. There our experience is different. The 2.5 hours experience is different from that 60 seconds experience. What is the difference? This is called psychological time. See, psychological time means this. So when you live your life, you are living your life within this domain of time. What domain? You are living in the domain of chronological time, which is socially agreed upon by all of us. Like, we all have decided that all of us will use that Gregorian calendar. Some point. Everybody started using that Gregorian calendar. Why that has been accepted and used? Because those people were ruling the world. Imagine Indians were to be ruling the whole world. Then everywhere they will be using Panchanga. You see, now whole world will be following our lunar calendar. Everybody will say, New Year is not January 1st then. Right? It will become April 14th. April 14th will become New Year 1st. New Year for the whole world. Then everybody will follow what I've been following. That is what? It's agreed upon. That is social. You see, so it's not going to be a fixed one. Whereas the psychological time is subjective. That same chronological 60 seconds would be experienced by one person in one way, another person in another way. Always we give the example of the class itself. That same class, half an hour. To one person it looks like, sir, just now you started the class, already half an hour. Half class is over already. One person, another person, my God, half an hour dana. Only half an hour gone, is it? Oh, you. Which means another half an hour is there. To another person it is like that. That 30 minutes is going to be the same for both. But the way they are experiencing that is different. This is called the psychological time. Now when we study Nityam, we are not referring to both. This is philosophical time. Now philosophical understanding of time is very different. See, you can't bring in chronological, psychological. Philosophically, time means it is time which facilitates, which makes you cognize your experience. Philosophical time. Chronological time, very easy. You just have to learn to read a clock and read the date. That's all. Calendar. If you know the calendar and clock, you would have understood chronological time. Right. Psychological time, you need little application. With little application, you can understand psychological time. The philosophic time is the little difficult one. It's not the clock here, what we are referring to. It's not how each one experiences subjectively also. Then what is time here? Means that time is that which helps you to cognize the experience. how you are able to register an experience is because of time. Delete the time factor, no experience of yours can be registered. That is why he says time is second. Why? Only in the second experience. In the first experience, there is no time. The concept of time comes into picture only in the second experience. So this is beyond. It says that time Brahman is standing beyond that also. That's what these people use this as Kala Tattva. They say one of the Tattvas, one of the principles here, one of the principles that is included is Kala there. What is that Kala, sir? Kala also, Lord of Death, is also referred as Kala. Very interesting. One side, same Kala is referred to as Lord of Death. Another aspect is it is referred to as time. What is a time? Time here is this. We are talking in this sense. Not in the sense of this. Unless this can happen, for your experience to move from 1 to 2, there has to be a space accommodating it, isn't it? That is the idea of space. Without a space, without time, without causation, no life can move. World cannot exist. And world is functioning only with these three: time, space, causation. What is the role of time in that? Space accommodates. Causation establishes the link between the first experience and the second experience. We all understand that. Space is easy to understand. Causation also little easy to understand. The difficult part of the tree is Kala. It is the time factor, because whenever I use the word time, immediately our idea will go to what? Chronological. You will go to history. What time? Time? No, that's not the idea here. Time here means, remember this, philosophically, anywhere you read in the Shastras, time, they will be talking about this time. Compromised way of talking about time is psychological time. Chronological time is not their concern at all. They are not bothered about chronological time. So they to give you a better idea, they start with psychological time, but then they ask you to move to that philosophical time after a point. So that is the idea of time. What is it, sir? It is that which gives a capacity, makes you to register an experience. Because registration of experience happens only with the second experience. If there is only one experience, you cannot register. There is no chance for us to understand first experience. We can always understand second. That's why he says the unit of time we have kept as second. So that philosophic time concept is used as the unit to refer the chronological time. So from there you can take a clue at least. So that's how it works, he says. So Brahman is beyond time. Beyond time means it is beyond what allows you to cognize the experience. That's what it means. You see, I think there's a question here we have. Is this? Yeah. Can you substantiate Kala with an example, sir? Not possible. If at all I have to give an example, we have to give an example of what? Okay, if I ask you, how long you slept? Sleeping. You can recognize that you were sleeping with what? Only after you wake up. Isn't it? First experience is you enter into sleep. Second experience is you exit. In no experience, you register at the entrance point. You register only after you exit out of it. Second. This is the meaning of second, Kala. What is the concept? Na? Dream or your sleep. You go to sleep. You can know that you were sleeping. How long you were sleeping? You can answer that question after you understand these two. One, I entered into sleep. Another one, I came out of sleep. Between the two only you can. What is giving you that? What is making you? What is accommodating you to do that? Is space. But what makes you to register that? Experience 1 and experience 2. And with these two only you will be able to understand the concept of time. Brahman is standing where? Only with experience 1. There is no second experience for Brahman. Since Brahman is standing at the first experience only, therefore what is Brahman? Beyond time. They said eternal. It transcends time. To refer that, they use the word Nityam. Nityam means transcending it. Right? So, with space it's easy to understand. Apply the same rule to time. Then what's the difference between space and time? Space accommodates, time makes you cognize. It accommodates it, it cognizes. Then what is causation, sir? Causation establishes the link between one experience to next experience. So these three work always together, not in isolation. Remember, it's not that first this comes, next this comes, next this comes. It's not like that. All three work together. From one angle it is time, from one angle it is space, from one angle it is causation. Now he says, Brahman is beyond world. Brahman is beyond world means it is beyond time, space, causation. So if it is beyond time, what is it? It is referred as Nityam, eternal. Beyond space, Sarvagatam, all pervading. That is how we understand this. Nirvikara. Vikara means that which goes through modifications. That's called the Vikara. That which goes through the changes. What are the changes? Birth, death, growth, disease, decay, death. These are the 5 metamorphic changes that the body goes through, the mind goes through, the intellect goes through. Brahman is not subjected to any one of these things. So therefore what? It is Nirvikara. So he says it is this one, first point. He gives 2 points here. Even though the paragraph is very small, right? There are 2 points in that paragraph. One changes. This doesn't go through the changes. Body, mind, intellect are continuously changing. This doesn't go through changes. What are the changes? Birth, growth, disease, decay, death. This happens to this. Now, vikara, don't say it is ugly. Now, sometimes we use a word, vikarama irukku. Vikara is not ugliness, remember. Vikara is modification. That which goes through certain modifications. That is what is referred to as vikara. What is it? The 5 fundamental changes of life. Brahman is not subject to this fundamental changes of modifications of life. Number 1. Number 2, he gives us from a relative angle. This is absolute angle. From a relative way, you are able to register a change only with the backdrop of changeless. Without a changeless, a change can never be registered. Not possible. If there is no changeless entity. And we are seeing changes happening everywhere. The world is changing, the body is changing, the mind is changing, the intellect is changing, vasanas are changing, my desires are changing, everything is changing. All that I know of, everything is changing. But I'm registering all the changes. That's why we are able to say, there is one thing which is changeless in the world. Sir, what is it now? Change. Change is the only thing which is changeless. How do you register? Right? You are able to register everything changing. That means there is something which is beyond all this changing. With reference to that alone, you should be able to register. What is that changeless entity? That changeless entity is what is referred as Brahman. So what that has to be, what is it, sir? It is called Nirvikara. That changeless entity is Brahman. Problem solved. Very logical. And very, very interesting. Each definition when you read, right, you will be getting a belief in you. Remember this. Yeah, correct, sir. Now I have understood Brahman. Now I got it. Eternal. I never thought Brahman can be eternal like this. Correct, sir. Eternal. Correct. This. And it is Nirvikara. Correct. It is stainless. Nirmala. Correct, sir. Brahman is Nirmala. Ajam. Correct. Now I have an idea. Now anybody asks me what is Brahman, I can give a lecture. Right. Now, that's where the problem will start. Not in terms of you giving lecture, please. Not in that sense I am saying. The belief it will give you that you have understood it. Yes, now I understand. You see, that belief these ideas will give you. That's where we say be careful in studying these things. This is Nirvikara. And then Nirmala. Mala means dirt. Nirmala means no dirt. There is no stain. It is stainless. Like we used to have, the stainless steel. Now it's a stainless steel. What is the difference between Taharam? Silver patram. They used to sell it as, silver la illa. It's just a steel sheet. That's all it is. What's the difference between normal steel and stainless steel? Normal steel gets rusty over a period of time. The stainless steel doesn't become rusty over a period of time. That's all. Which means what? It stays as it is. It just stays because of some processing and all that. I don't know what the process they do and all that, but it goes through something. After that, what it becomes, a same steel becomes intact. It doesn't deteriorate. There is no dirt that comes in. So he says, what is this? Brahman is Nirmala. There is no impurity in Brahman. Now we have to ask the question, what is the impurity we are talking about here? Now one thing is very clear. See, one thing we can study, Nirmala. Why it has to be Nirmala? Because to stain that, there has to be something other than that should exist. Correct. Now already we have seen Brahman is Ekam. Not only Ekam, it is Advayam. Therefore, there is nothing other than Brahman existing to contaminate Brahman, to make it impure. That's why he gives the example of gold and what is it? Copper. Copper is what they use, no? Isn't it? To mix it. Something the copper mix. Gold is a different substance, copper is a different substance. Therefore, copper can contaminate gold. Mark, even gold can contaminate copper. If copper is mixed with gold, then we will call that as what? It is an impure copper. It's not a pure copper. Pure copper means it should not have anything other than copper in it. Only then it is called pure copper. When it comes to Brahman, is there anything other than Brahman that is existing? We have already seen Brahman is Ekam Advayam. Therefore, nothing other than Brahman exists to contaminate it. Therefore, Brahman has to be what? Pure. That is Nirmala. This is one way of understanding it. Then what is the another thing he gives is, we ask this fundamental question. Sir, what is the impurity we are talking about here? We are not talking about mixing of gold and copper here. That's not the discussion. The discussion is, what is the impurity? Brahman doesn't carry that impurity in it. Then we have to ask this question, what is impure? Say, what is impurity? There is only one impurity. What is it? Ignorance is the impurity. Brahman doesn't carry the impurity of ignorance. Therefore, Brahman is what? All-knowing. What is the dirt? The dirt in you. See, we understand certain dirts in our personality. Sir, I have certain dirts in my personality, sir. What is it? I am very greedy. One person says, another, I get angry. I am this, I am that. All this impurity. What you don't understand is, all these things are expressions of that fundamental impurity called ignorance. When you wipe out that ignorance, all these manifestations gets deleted automatic. There's no necessity for you to put in any special effort to delete these things individually. What about my jealousy? What about my greed? What about my anger? What about this? What about that? All those things you don't have to worry. Everything gets settled automatic. The moment you remove this fundamental impurity. What is impurity, sir? Impurity of Brahman. The world has a contamination. What is the contamination of the world? Ignorance is the contamination. There is no possibility called pure world. In the world, if you are striving for pure people, you will not find a single individual in the world who is pure. Impossible. You study Jain literature, they glorify Krishna, but they don't call him perfect. There is some errors by Krishna also. Of course, in the next, but they can't digest it. So what they have done is, they have done a very interesting thing. In the next cycle of creation, the first Tirthanga would be Krishna. The first master will be Krishna in the next cycle. But till then, where is he? He is not in heaven, he is in hell now. Krishna. Is he a perfect one? No. One group of people will say he is not perfect. He is not correct. This is not, that's not. Now for everyone you see in the world, anything that you see in the world, there is no way we can come to a conclusion this is pure. Because, remember this, for you to refer something as pure, you need impurity as a reference point. Isn't it? In the world, whenever we understand pure, we say what? Oh, he is such a pure individual, sir. He is a pure soul. We refer, no? Casually. Without understanding what we are talking, we just say, such a pure soul. Okay. How did you conceive that pure soul? Your idea of purity has a reference of impurity, without which it is not possible. Now, in Brahman, there is no reference point to call it is pure or not. Therefore, they gave a negative definition of Nirmala. Shuddha, they could have given, no? Pure. Clean, sir, it is. They can give words for that. But why they give this negative term? Why Nirvikara? Right? Why they have to give Nirmala? There is no dirt in it. Why there is no dirt in it? Even your concept of clean, pure, carries dirt along with it. So, remove that. That's where Brahman is. Fascinating idea. This Nirmala. You got to think on that. You see, beautiful term. Now each one, we get really tempted to go into the details of it. But if you go into details, you can never complete it, and it will become too complex. Because I am not going into that much of details of all this. Nirmala, when we say, I understand pure, my concept of pure carries impurity at the bottom. Along with impurity only, I am understanding purity. So, not to talk about impurity. When I say impure is bad, oh, he is a very bad person, sir. Then we say, what are we referring to? Directly we see that impurity. But what about purity, sir? Vedanta is not saying Brahman is pure. He says it is not impure. Why? Because your concept of purity, you recognize purity. For you to recognize purity, you need impurity as a reference point. Advayam. If Brahman is Advayam, then what is it? There is neither purity nor impurity. Therefore, what is it, sir? There is no impurities in Brahman. It is Nirmalam. Yes. Continue.
Anantam, infinite. Things and beings of the world have a beginning and an end. They are all finite. They arise out of, exist in, and merge into Brahman. Brahman is the substratum upon which the worlds appear and disappear. It is beginningless, endless, infinite. Gnanam, knowledge. Brahman is absolute, pure knowledge, the knowing principle with which everything becomes known. People have the knowledge of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Also the knowledge of joy and sorrow, of thought and idea. These are all conditioned knowledge. Knowledge defined by perception, emotion, and thought, whereas Brahman is knowledge undefined, unconditioned. None can possess knowledge of Brahman. It is knowledge per se, unrelated to anything. Anandam, bliss. The pleasures derived from objects and beings of the world are fleeting, ephemeral, whereas the bliss of self-realization is absolute, eternal. It is the ultimate goal of human evolution. The enlightened enjoys the uninterrupted, supreme bliss. Turiyam, fourth, refers to the state of self-realization, the state of pure consciousness beyond the waking, dream, and deep sleep. These three states are conditioned by the gross, subtle, and causal bodies respectively. When one detaches oneself from the three bodies, rises above their conditioning, one merges with the pure consciousness, reaches the fourth state of Turiyam. Achintyam, inconceivable. Brahman is pure consciousness. It is the supreme self enlivening the senses to perceive objects, mind to feel emotions, and intellect to conceive thoughts. It is the subject, not the object of experience. Your body, mind, and intellect cannot reach Brahman. The self conceiving the world through the intellect is like a viewer observing a landscape through a telescope. The viewer uses the telescope to view everything except himself. He cannot see himself with the telescope. Likewise, the self uses the intellect to conceive everything in the world except itself. Hence, the self is said to be inconceivable.
Achintyam. Anantam, infinite. We have seen that. It is with reference to the cause and effect, it is infinite. We understand cause and effect as infinite. We say cause and effect is not infinite. It is Brahman's property of infinity superimposed on the world as cause and effect, appearing to be infinite. But original owner of infinity is Brahman. So we say it is Anantam, infinite. Gnanam, knowledge. Now here when we say knowledge, we are not referring to knowledge of something. Then what is knowledge here? It is the knowing principle. That which makes you capable of knowing. That is knowledge here. That's why when we ask the question, do you know? We immediately ask, what? Do you know? Say, what? Then I have to explain, what is that? Then you can answer yes or no. Do you know there is a match today happening? You can answer yes or no to it. Otherwise you will not know. You can never answer that question, do you know per se. Why? He says all your knowledge, your perception, your things, everything is defined by this. Your perception defines your knowledge. Your emotion defines your knowledge. Your thought conditioned. When your thought gets conditioned by something, that is what you understand as knowledge. Brahman is knowledge. When we say, it is referring to Brahman minus those conditionings. Then what is it? The capacity to know. That's Gnanam. So what is knowledge here? Just the capacity to know. Then we immediately ask, see, this is where the problem is. If you think little, you get into trouble. There should be someone who knows the knowing principle, no? Now, who is the one who knows the knowing principle? There is known and unknown, and then there is a knowing principle, and then me standing who knows the knowing principle. Then is it knowing principle? No, I become the knowing principle, that becomes unknown. Then what is Brahman? Brahman is the subject. That's what finally he gives the example of the telescope. With the telescope you see the landscape. Right? But you cannot use the same to see you. With the eyes, you can see through the microscope. Telescope or microscope, you can see. But you cannot use the telescope or microscope to see your eyes. Imagine, I pluck my eye and put there. Then what will happen? You cannot see. You see, what you are using to see cannot be seen. That is the problem here. So we say, what is knowledge? Knowledge here, we are not referring to all the things that you know and all the things that you do not know. In our knowledge, in our understanding, knowledge, ignorance, there are two different things. There are few things in life that I know, there are few things that I do not know. These two categories are there. Now what is Brahman? He says, Brahman, it doesn't fall into the category of knowledge or ignorance. Then what is Brahman? Brahman is that which enables you to know all that you know, also enables you to know all that you do not know. All that you know is referred as knowledge. All that you do not know is referred as ignorance. But then there is something in you which makes you register this is known, this is unknown. Isn't it? Otherwise, how will you know whatever you don't know? Huh? How do you know that you do not know German language? I don't know how many of you know Arabic language. Right? How do you know that you do not know Arabic language? I think DPP Rao should be knowing that. Arabic. He should be able to read also by now. Reading la. He is not able to read, he says. Little, one or two words here and there I can manage, sir. If someone starts speaking Arabic language, you are able to say, sir, I don't know that what you are speaking. How do you know that you don't know that? So, you are having knowledge of your ignorance. You are having knowledge of your knowledge. So, you know what you know what you do not know. With what you get to know what you know, with what you get to know what you don't know. Adhan Brahman. Confused, no? Now I can sleep today. Confused few people means they are happy. Pada. This knowledge is an undefined knowledge. All the knowledge, beautiful word he uses. It is defined by your perception, defined by your emotions. Better word than conditioned. You see, I like that term. Defined by perception, emotion, and thought. Our knowledge is defined knowledge. This knowledge is what? Undefined knowledge. Pure knowledge this is. Not conditioned by anything. So what is that, sir? It is that knowing principle. That is called Brahman. So what is Brahman now? Brahman is all knowledge. What is this all knowledge, sir? It is the knowing principle. What is the knowing principle? Then you go to the explanation. What is the knowing principle? For which you should know what is knowledge, what is ignorance. From there you derive all these points. Bliss. Anandam. See, in life, there are three things referred here. There are three words. Sukham, Dukham, Anandam. Pleasure, pain, bliss. Now, what is Brahman? Brahman is neither pleasure nor pain. There is neither Sukham in Brahman nor Dukham in Brahman. Then what is Brahman, sir? Brahman is full of bliss. And what is that bliss? Nobody knows. Now, now can I understand bliss? Not possible. Why? Because all that you can understand falls into the category of Sukham and Dukham. Now we think I intensify Sukham. Right? I start magnifying Sukham. I start increasing the intensity of Sukham. One day that Sukham will become Anandam. They say no, that never happens. That is not a possibility. Because, again go back to the basic rule here of life. What is it, sir? For you to intensively experiencing Sukham, what is the necessary condition needed for that? I repeat. For you to intensely experience Sukham, what is the condition needed? You should have experienced intense Dukham. Only if you have had intense Dukham, there is intensity of Sukham. Isn't it? That's why most of this, elderly people always say, when we were getting that new dress for Diwali, the joy of wearing that new dress on Diwali, and then next day you go to school, that's a color dress. Next day, school, you wear that and go. What a joy, used to have. Now these days, these kids don't have that joy at all, sir. Why? When you were having that Nataraj pencil, right? Nataraj geometry box. And another fellow brings a Camberlin one. Because we used to consider Camberlin to be superior to Nataraj. So the fellow brings, we are doing all this. Suddenly one fellow comes and flashes this Reynolds pen. 045. Reynolds pen. Wow, what a joy. We are getting, from now onwards, you are allowed to use ball pen. 8th standard onwards, you are allowed to use ball pen to write in the class notes. What a joy, what a joy. Why? How? That much of deprivation. You are deprived. That's why we are enjoying mango. We are waiting for mango season. and in the first 2 weeks itself you lose all the pleasure possibility of mango season. Why? The moment mangoes come in, you jump into it, you indulge in it, and you lose your pleasure possibility. That's why the first mangoes were having greater pleasure. Why? Deprivation. Unless you have intensely experienced Dukham, you cannot experience Sukham. It is not possible. You need that. Now if I say, I am going to increase my Sukham, I wanted to have greater Sukham in life, what is the necessary condition required for that? What are you supposed to do? You have to increase Dukham. Now today what we are doing, none of us are interested in increasing Dukham. Sir, but I want to experience intensity of Sukham more. It doesn't work in life. It is a law of life. The law is this. It is directly connected to the intensity of pain. The pleasure that you can experience is connected like that. And what is Brahman? It is beyond the Sukham. There is no Dukham there. For sure. Then is it Sukham, sir? They said, no, it's not Sukham also. Why? Because to experience Sukham, you need the reference of Dukham. Therefore, they use another term, which is not Sukham, which doesn't have the opposite. What is it, sir? Ananda. Because the moment you say Brahman to be an object, remember this, anything in the world of objects and beings carries the potential in it to give you Sukham or give you Dukham. Every object in the world has this possibility. So Brahman is neither that. It neither gives you Sukham nor gives you Dukham. Why? Because Ananda is not coming from that object or being. The source is not that. The source is internal. Since it is coming from inside, we are using that different term called Ananda. That's why we say pleasure is defined as satiation of agitation. So what is pleasure? What is Sukham? What is the definition of Sukham? Happiness. What is the definition, sir? Happiness means cessation of agitation. So how intensely you can experience happiness is directly connected to how intensely you have been experiencing agitation. More agitation, more chances of Sukham. Neither. Says fourth, Turiyam. Turiyam means fourth. Fourth doesn't mean, it's not, arithmetically. Then people ask me, sir, which is the first state? So deep sleep is the first state. Then the second state is dream. Third state is, then you are in trouble. You see, it is not to be studied like that. Right? People read it as, first state is deep sleep, second state is dream, third state is waking, then the fourth state is realization. Then another fellow comes and says, no, there is actual realization in the fifth state. The fourth state is in between. Then another person comes and says, no, there are 7 states of consciousness. Then another person comes and says, there are very many layers to consciousness. It's not to be studied in that sense. Then what does it mean? All that it means is, anything that we know is falling under these 3 states. And all these 3 are conditioned. What are the 3? Waking state, dream state, deep sleep state. What is conditioning that? your causal body, subtle body, gross body. These three bodies condition to create these three states of experiences to us. When you remove this gross body, subtle body, causal body, what will happen? You will go to a different state. To refer to that different from the known three states, we use the word four. Turiyam. Don't think literally there is some fourth state and all that. People think, actually you get transported there. And they think, the travel also they will show. Why it goes. Or that. Nothing like that, please. Just that fourth. Last one he gives Achintyam. Inconceivable. Why? All the 14 what he gave would have given you an impression. Of what? All these things, will give you a vague intellectual conceptualization about Brahman. Either individually or collectively. Collectively it would have given some notion, some idea about Brahman. Okay, this is what Brahman is. Now I have an idea of what is Brahman, sir. He says, all that 14, whatever that 14 has given you an impression about Brahman is not Brahman. What is it, sir? Achintyam. It is inconceivable. It is inconceivable. That which cannot be defined, you are trying to take. You are trying to take that as the definition. This is the mistake most of us make. See, you take Ekam, Advayam, Anantam, Nityam, Nirmalam to be definition of Brahman. See, he says, no. Why? Because the very meaning of Brahman is indefinable. Now the problem is that indefinability of Brahman is the definition you take for Brahman. புரிஞ்சுதா? தலையாட்டிங்க. Now when we say, sir, Brahman is inconceivable, it cannot be defined. Now you take that inconceivability as a concept. See, defeat the whole purpose. You see that? That's the catch. That's the problem with these things. See, that's why he is giving that as a last point. He says, look here, man, the list is not exhaustive. It is, much more is there. I am just giving you a few indications. Now you will go through in the Shastras, you will see very many angles, very many things they have used to explain what Brahman is. But what you need to understand is, all those things will give you an idea, and all these things explaining to you are not definitions of Brahman. They are not defining Brahman. Now you know what you will do. You will reject all that and take this to be definition of Brahman. And say, what is Brahman? Brahman is indefinable, sir. Becomes the definition for Brahman. You see that? It is catch 22. This is the danger. Achintyam, inconceivable. If you get used to this, if you are really interested in Vedanta, this is the portion you have to study. Strength of emotion, light of wisdom, not boring. Boring in the sense not to this intensity. This is the real philosophy. It's all just introduction we say, basic. But true material is in this 15 points. Thank you.